Good morning to the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission hearing of April 24th. We begin our agenda today with Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and justice for all.
That was it. We were interpretive this morning. Yeah, I like it. I like it. The little creativity there. Okay, so proceeding on, I have to put the agenda on top. Let's start with our TV coverage announcement, Mr. Villalobos, and you can go straight into roll call after that if you like.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the Commission. Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, Santa Maria, and Orca areas. Rebroadcast of Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSB TV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website, as well as the county's YouTube channel. Today's hearing will also be available for download in a day or two. And moving on to the roll call, Commissioner Cooney.
Here.
Commissioner Park.
It's me.
Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Chair Bradley, and our Commissioner Martinez will be absent today.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. In regards to the status of our agenda, we have 3 items on the standard agenda. However, we have a request for a continuance on item number 2, which is the El Capitan Canyon Campground. I'd recommend that we take that item first once we get to the standard agenda and address that continuance.
Well, I'm fine with that.
Oh, Mike.
When it's read. Counterintuitive. All right, do you need a motion to?
No, so
Yes.
when we get to our standard agenda, we'll just reorganize it to make it number 1 on the agenda.
Okay, did you explain that to the applicant and appellant? Because I had some conversations with them. I thought it had to stay at the agendized space.
It will
even.
stay on the standard agenda, but we'll just reorder it so it'll become number 1
Okay,
to take up the continuance.
okay.
If they want to stay number 2, they can, but for efficiency, it'd probably be better to move them to the number 1 slot.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, then we move on to, are we ready for the projection report? Are you doing that for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm seeing how many times I can say Madam Chair today. Looking at the projection report, our next scheduled hearing will be May 1st, and that will be the energy element amendment that is scheduled to be here in Santa Barbara, and I think we'd continued it to that date. And then the next hearing after that will be on May 8th, and that will be in Santa Maria. There are 3 items on that date. There's single-family dwelling, as well as the Orchid Community Park specific plan amendment project to add lighting, and then an outdoor cannabis cultivation conditional use permit will be on that day. And then we will not meet again until May 29th, and that's when we will again take up the agricultural enterprise ordinance. There is a note on here that Commissioner Cooney will be absent that day, but that will be another hearing on the agricultural ordinance amendment. And then after that, I believe we canceled June 5th. And then to continue our summer break, June 12th, we had 1 item agendized for that. However, that lands on a budget hearing day, so there's a conflict with that date. So we're going to be working with staff to move that item, which is the Arctic Cold Ag Industrial Overlay Project. So depending on the applicant's availability, we may move that down to the 26th of June. But we'll work with staff on where that gets placed on the agenda. So then, June 26th, we have one item, the Los Conchas homeowners appeal of a cannabis cultivation on Foothill Drive, and that'll be here in Santa Barbara. July 3rd, no items projected at this point. And then July 10th, we have an appeal of, I guess, that's where the applicant and appellant are requesting the item today be continued to July 10th for the El Capitan Canyon Campground. So that's as far as I have on the projection report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I had one item. I'm going to be out of town on June 5th, so you said that that was canceled. It's still showing up as kind of a hearing, or what's happening? We know Commissioner Cooney is going to.
Madam Chair, maybe I misspoke. I had thought we'd canceled it, but I might have got ahead of myself, so it looks like I was anticipating us canceling it, so it still is showing up on the agenda.
Great.
So for the projection report, we would look for a motion on canceling the June 12th because that is a conflict for budget hearings. I don't know if we want to keep June 5th open. We could if we wanted to.
You will have 3 commissioners that day, not me or Commissioner Cooney, so.
Or we could cancel it. There are no items projected at this point.
Move to cancel June 5 and June 12 hearings.
Second.
There we go. Roll call, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Our summer break will commence in the beginning of June.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooney, did you have another?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving along here, we get to public comment, and this is a time on our agenda where people that want to speak to us about things that are not already on the agendized schedule today can have their 3 minutes. Is that what we do? 3 minutes. So I have 2 speaker slips. Did you give me a speaker slip, or? Yeah. Oh, no, wait, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. These are actually for an item on our agenda. Sorry, my bad. Thank you. So please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Ms. Sandoval.
Hi, everyone. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Diana Sandoval. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and Mr. Wilson, I am Diana Sandoval, and I'm here to once again discuss the unsafe bridge that Building and Safety allowed to be rebuilt without permits on my property. As a mom of 2 small children, safety has always been my main priority. I've been pleading with Ms. Plowman and Building and Safety to please enforce its own judgments and ordinances for the safe rebuild of the bridge. I've been pleading for the county to enforce permits to prevent another accident. In 2017, someone fell through the bridge. My property was held liable, even though my property doesn't use a bridge. It's a service entrance for a private polo estate, but because I am the majority owner and it's on my property, I am legally responsible. Here are some of the county's discrepancies. In an email to Mr. Horton, Ms. Plowman states, the bridge is exempted from permits as a structure is less than 120 square feet. The truth is, the bridge is 218 square feet in an ESH and flood zone and in the coastal zone. In an email to the building official, the inspector is not honest and says, I own 1/3 of the bridge, and that because the bridge is near my driveway, I do not like it. The truth is, the bridge is 2/3 on my property. The bridge is not safe, and my property is liable for the subpar repairs the county is allowing. The building official is authorizing the bridge for pedestrian and light utility use via an over-the-counter permit. The truth is, 4 structural engineers, including the county's own, are stating the abutments are deficient. Per the county's engineer, the abutments are the primary concern. Also, the county fast-tracked this without my consent or notification, and I am the majority property owner. Lastly, in the email,
We've got 1 minute left. Sorry, go ahead.
the building official states, we need to be careful we're not giving approval for someone to construct something on a portion of property they may not own or don't have legal access. but gives approval to continue rebuilding without permits on a red tag. The truth is, the building official's negligence allowed the bridge to be rebuilt on my property outside of the easement. Let me repeat, on my property outside of the easement. I implore the commission to investigate and hold Ms. Plowman and Building and Safety accountable for their negligence and for violating my property rights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the commission? Mr. Reed, Commissioner Reed, you had your light on, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I do have a question of staff. This is the third time we've heard this comment, and I don't know if there's a way we can get an update on it from staff soon, or, this is the third time Ms. Sandoval's been in public comment. And I know it's not agendized today, but I'm just wondering what any follow-up might be. Sorry.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, we recommend that Ms. Sandoval continue to work with Director Plowman, schedule a meeting with her. I know that staff has had communications with her. We can coordinate with Director Plowman to, at a future hearing, during the director's report, potentially give you an update on the status of it. There isn't an item before the commission, so there isn't any oversight on the commission on this particular item, as it's a building permit. But we can work with the director on providing an update at the next hearing, maybe during a director's report.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Park?
Chair Bridley, since you brought it up, I also noted that this is the third time we've heard this, and I've been wondering since like the first time, what is conceivably the Planning Commission's role? So if you come and make a fourth presentation, I think that would be something worth addressing. Okay, it's certainly you're entitled, it's a public forum to comment on anything related to what we do, but if you have something you want the Planning Commission to do and think it's empowered to do, it'd be worth stating. But also, just as a word of advice, I would go see a good real estate attorney about the law of nuisance so that you could end this source of eternal frustration for you. I sympathize with you, but you want to achieve something, and that might be a way of doing it.
No, sorry. Thank you. Okay, then. Let's move on to our next item on the agenda, which is Planning Commissioner's informational reports. Do we have anyone? Commissioner Reed?
Yes, last week I had the opportunity to attend the Santa Maria Valley Housing Summit, which was put on by the Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce. It looked at various developmental projects in the city of Santa Maria and the North County, including a number of projects that were considered in the housing element rezoning process. Heard a very informative talk as part of the program from Alex Tuttle, part of our planning department. I thought some of his information detailing the amount of background effort and work with respect to the rezoning process on the part of planning and development was very informative, and wish that more of the residents of the county had an opportunity to have heard that information. I think it would have helped to alleviate a number of concerns I've heard about the whole process. So I thought, again, Mr. Tuttle made a very informative and I thought valuable presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Does anybody else have anything? I have a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to applaud our very own Santa Barbara County Planning and Development Department for getting an award from the American Planning Association at its annual meeting for the Balancing Act tool. as a, I can't remember what the name of the award, it was very long and I took a photo of it, but I'm not going to share it, but it was something for educational outreach, I believe, and that's great because this award goes to planning organizations and consultants in the Tri-County area. It's Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo. So thank you to Planning and Development, little shout out. Hoping Lisa would be here, but you guys can pass it on to the director. And the second thing is, like Commissioner Reed, I actually attended a similar housing forum that's sponsored here by the Santa Barbara Chamber of Commerce. I went there for a nonprofit that I serve on, but it was very informative because they, as the chamber, are launching a pretty interesting program that's involved in setting up LLCs for developers to participate in, but actually employers would subscribe to an LLC with some kind of a fee payment and then be available to have access to master lease agreements. And they're using the Glen Annie Golf Course site as one of their models, as well as, they're very familiar with all the things that we just took action on with the housing element. So I thought that was wonderful because now we've got the private sector trying to get a forum for employers to get into these housing units since we couldn't condition them to do that under fair housing laws. So that was informative too, and shout out to the Chamber of Commerce, they're doing a good job. Okay, that's it. Let's move on to item 7. Item 8, minutes. We have 2 sets. So we want to take the March 27th ones first. Does anybody have corrections? Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I spoke with Mr. Villalobos before the meeting about the public comment entry. That's item 6 on these unapproved minutes. And I just wanted to make a point that Ms. Sandoval spoke about a bridge that was the subject of a lawsuit regarding its safety, and then continued, building and safety staff have allowed the reconstruction of the bridge and so on. My concern with this is that Ms. Sandoval certainly made that allegation, but it should be reflected in our minutes that it was only an allegation. It was not anything representing action by the commission. So I would just suggest in front of the second sentence, in front of the word building, we insert Ms. Sandoval alleges that, and then it continues on. So with that change, just to get it before the commission, I would otherwise approve the unapproved minutes. That's my motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Reed. Motion second, and do we, all in one motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that takes us to our second set of minutes, which is April 1, 2024. And does anybody have notes on that? Commissioner Cooney?
No, I don't. I just move approval of those minutes as submitted.
Okay, actually.
Second.
Great. On the motion, I do have a comment on page 4, item F. And maybe I just forgot, because we did a lot of things that day, but on item F, it's to adopt an ordinance, et cetera, and the 4th line down, plan zoning south map to rezone 3 parcels. Is that, we rezone more than 3 parcels, but was that only in the coastal zone? We only had 3 in the coastal zone, is that it? Sorry. I think so. You probably just answered my question. Help? Because we had Caird, Equals, St. Athanasius part of it, I think.
Madam Chair, we probably could trail this to get some clarification on this one.
Okay.
That way,
I might be wrong. I didn't go back to my packet and count them.
yeah, can we trail it or move it to the next meeting? And then
Okay.
we can make sure we sync up with your understanding and what we wrote.
Okay.
Wrote.
All right, so let's trail that. And that brings us to our director's report.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, recommend that we move the director's report to maybe after the continuance request. She'll be here around 9:30.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to our standard agenda, and I'm assuming that we are taking item number 2, the request for a continuance at this time. Is that correct?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, that's the recommendation. Being that there's a request for continuance by both parties, we could hear the request and the commission can make a decision.
Okay, I mean, you need to read it in the record, and then we take that request. Okay, so Mr. Villalobos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of Doug Kern, representative for Gaviota Coast Conservancy, to consider case number 23 APL 35, an appeal of the Central Board of Architecture Reviews, preliminary design review approval of case number 23 BAR1, and after considering the environmental review documents, addendum dated November 1st, 2010, together with a previously adopted negative declaration, case number 04 NGD 8, determined as reflected in the CEQA findings, no subsequent environmental impact report or negative declaration shall be prepared for this project.
Thank you. Okay, wait a second. I have my instruction sheet. At this time, we would do ex parte communications, even though it's a continuance, correct? So does any commissioner have any ex parte communications regarding this item? Commissioner Park?
Yes, I had another site visit along with Commissioner Reed, and he'll recall the date.
Okay, I had conversations with both Beth Collins, the applicant's representative, and Anna Citrin yesterday just regarding the continuance and where it may be on the agenda. Are there any others? No. Okay. Then we go to, oh, I'm sorry.
I
Commissioner
suppose I
Reed.
should say I also made the site visit with Commissioner Park.
You're supposed to tell the date.
All right. Thank you for those ex parte communications, and we would go to staff presentation, the request.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kevin De Los Santos, and this project is the appeal of the El Capitan Canyon Campground Areas F1 and F2 Design Review application. The project was heard by your commission on February 28th of this year. At this hearing, the project was continued. For today's hearing, staff provided a memo that details how the applicant and appellant are requesting another continuance to July 10th. That hearing is actually located in Santa Maria. So both the applicant and appellant notified staff that they would instead prefer a hearing in Santa Barbara, on July 31st. Staff recommends that your commission continue the project to July 31st. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any requests for public comment on this item? I am holding only 4 slips for item number 3. Is there anybody online? Are we waiting for,
No hands up.
okay. We'll just wait for him to come back. So we have no public comment, and are there any questions from the commissioners? I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Park.
I have no questions. I move to continue this matter to July 31, 2024.
So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I think the appellants and applicants are
Available.
available, so we probably should hear from them.
Okay.
Don't blow it.
Yeah.
I'm making the motion. All you can do is make it worse.
Commissioners, my name's Hugh Brownlee. I'm representing the applicant today, and we are pleased to be working with GCC on a prospective resolution and hope to not see you on July 31st.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Chair Bradley and Commissioners. Concur with what Mr. Brownlee said. We support the continuance to July 31st and hoping to continue these productive conversations with the applicant team. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with no other testimony before us, I believe we close the public hearing, and that comes to our commissioner questions. Commissioner Reed?
Just had a question with respect, if we move that to July 31st, what happens with the July 10th meeting? Do we cancel it? Do we have an open day?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed, there's items that are going to be placed on the July 10th that will be appropriately heard in the Santa Maria location. So we would recommend keep the July 10th meeting on the calendar.
Okay, thank you. Then I think that we would be ready to vote on that item, right? Motion?
There was no second.
Commissioner Park made a motion.
I'm not proposing that he change his motion. I just think the record should reflect that Ms. Citron was speaking in favor of the continuance. And she spoke, and I saw her, but she didn't mention her name.
It's not even a set of minutes, and we got quite good job. Okay, so did you second, was that a second also?
It sure was.
All righty. So we have a motion and a second. Let's go for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. I like it when you do it, Mr. Villalobos. It's sort of a ceremonial
Well,
invitation.
Motion passes 4-0. How about
There you
that?
go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, from our Pledge of Allegiance to our motion giving, we're creative this morning. Let's just look at it that way. Okay, that brings us to item number 1 as regularly scheduled on the agenda for the Eco Mama Farms. Mr. Villalobos, do you want to read that into the record?
Happy to, thank you. The following is a hearing on the request of Eco Mama Farms LLC to consider case number 23 LLA6 and to determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15305.
Thank you. This is the point where we ask the commissioners if there are any ex parte communications or site visit disclosures. Does anybody have anything to report on that? I'm seeing none. Then we'll go to our staff presentation. There you go. I had the same problem.
I know. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name's Adam, and I will be presenting an overview of the proposed lot line adjustment project. Here's a vicinity map to orient you to the project site. As you can see in this aerial image, the subject properties are located just east of Highway 154 off of Baseline Avenue in the Santa Ynez Valley. Both parcels take access from Baseline Avenue and will continue to do so after the lot line adjustment. The proposed project is a request to adjust the lot lines between two legal lots. The applicant has requested this lot line adjustment to better serve the existing agricultural operations and comply with the Ag Preserve contract requirements. The Agriculture Preserve Advisory Committee reviewed the revised configuration on June 26, 2023, and found it to be in conformance with the Williamson Act contract requirements. No development is proposed under this lot line adjustment request. Existing parcel 1, shown here in yellow, is approximately 64 acres. Existing parcel 2, shown in purple, is currently just over 19 acres. Existing parcel 1 is developed with a horse barn, and existing parcel 2 is developed with a single-family dwelling, guest house, and accessory structures. The existing lot line to be adjusted is highlighted in yellow. The proposed adjustment to the lot line is shown in the red dashed line. After a lot line adjustment, proposed parcel 1 will be 43.79 acres, and proposed parcel 2 will be 40.09 acres. Since both proposed parcels are zone Ag 240, both parcels will meet the minimum lot size requirement after the lot line adjustment. The lot line adjustment is consistent with the comprehensive plan, including the Santa Ynez Valley Community Plan. Both lots have a land use designation of agricultural commercial, which has a minimum lot size of 40 acres. Both lots comply with the required setbacks of the Act 2 zone district for the existing structures. Proposed parcel 1 and 2 will conform to the minimum lot size requirements as both proposed lots are over 40 acres in size. No new physical development is proposed under this lot line adjustment request. Additionally, the project is consistent with all of Chapter 21 subdivision regulations, such as conforming to minimum parcel size requirements and setbacks for the zone district, all of which are detailed in Section 6.3.2 of the staff report. The proposed project can be found exempt through CEQA Section 15305, which allows for minor alterations and land use limitations. This categorical exemption applies because the average slopes on the parcels are less than 20%, and the lot line adjustment will not result in any changes in land use or density. In summary, staff recommends your commission take the following actions. Make the required findings for approval, including CEQA findings. Determine the project is exempt from CEQA, and approve the project subject to the conditions included in Attachment B. This concludes staff's presentation. We're available for any questions. The agent, Brett Jones, is also available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Reed?
Yes, I have, well, two questions. This lot line adjustment, all the adjusted lines are entirely within the same property, right? No impact on neighbors at all.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed, that's correct.
Okay, second question. I notice in section 5.2 and in your narrative, it says the intent of the proposed lot line split is to further support the existing agriculture operations. Well, on our own properties, our own ranches, we have a number of APNs, and I've never thought whether it's in one APN or another has had any influence whatever on our existing ag operations. I'm wondering if I've been missing something important. So if you could explain to me what the positive influence on the existing ag operations will be, I would appreciate that.
That's a great question, Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed. Yeah, great question. So the purpose of this lot line adjustment is to support the existing agriculture operations on site. Part of doing that, the parcels are under ag contract, Williamson ag contract. So to further, and both parcels are up for ag renewals too. So to further support the agricultural operations and to justify the Williamson ag contract, the applicant has decided to go through this lot line adjustment to better support the need for the ag contract.
Well, okay, that I don't really find that enlightening, but it certainly doesn't rise to the level of any reason to oppose this. So, thank you. Yeah.
And Chair Bradley, Commissioner Reed, if I may, the larger parcel is actually owned by two entities, and so the flower operation is going to be expanding, and the ownership of that larger parcel is changing, and so this is kind of to reconcile the separation of their operations.
That's making more sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. I do have one quick one. The existing parcel 2 is actually now non-conforming as to lot size under this zoning, right? So it's going to become conforming, so that's an extra bonus in a way.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. No other questions from the commission. Let's move it to the applicant's presentation. Mr. Jones is here.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners. I don't have a presentation. I'm just here to answer any questions. I think the major one was, why are we doing this? And I want to thank Adam for all his work on this, and then thank Shannon for her explanation of why we're doing that. And that's the reason, really, is to become conforming with the underlying zoning, Williamson Act, uniform rules, and then also for EcoMama to gain the 20 acres for a larger flower farm. And then they'll separate ownership from the larger parcel when it's complete. But I'm here to answer any other questions.
Commissioner Park?
I'll just make the additional comment that this will better position both parcels to take advantage of the benefits of the Ag Enterprise Ordinance when it gets passed. So good luck with that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Park, thank you. I have that on my list, and I forgot to mention that.
Good, good. Okay, if there are no other questions from the commission, then we will turn to public comment. I don't have any speaker slip. Is there anyone online?
No speakers online.
All right. So we are opening and then now closing the public comment period on the case. And we will take it back to the commission for any questions or deliberations. I don't think staff has anything more to add. So third district item. Commissioner Park, you.
This is a simple item. Someday I'll have to look at the ordinance and try to understand why it needs to come before the Planning Commission. But it is here today, now, so I'd like to get it over with, and I'm going to move to approve this.
Commissioner Reed?
I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we are just speeding ahead. Let's take a roll call vote. Oh, wait. Okay.
Commissioner Cooney.
Aye.
Commissioner Park.
Aye, but why are we doing a roll call vote?
We can have a separate discussion on that, but
Yeah.
I prefer it for items that are on our agenda here for our decision.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
And Chair Bradley.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 3, which is the SBSR LLC apartments. Do you want to read that into the record too?
Happy to. Thank you, Madam Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of SBSR LLC Apartments. I'm sorry, SBSR LLC to consider case number 22 DVP4 and to determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Public Resource Code Section 21159.25.
Thank you, Mr. Villalobos. This is a point where we ask for ex parte communications from the commission. Does anybody have anything to share? Seeing none, we would move to the staff presentation. Nobody can believe we're moving this quickly, but in fact, it can happen. So here we go.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Willow Brown. I will be presenting the SBSR LLC Apartments project. The project site, outlined in red on this map, is located at 4555 Hollister Avenue in the Eastern Galita Valley Community Plan area. The site is 1.07 acres and is zoned designed residential 20 units per acre. The surrounding parcels are zoned 10R1. The current zoning was adopted in 2015 as part of the Eastern Galita Valley Community Plan update, rezoning the subject parcel from 10R1 to DR20 to allow for higher density housing. These are photos of the subject site. The photo on the left shows the view from Hollister Avenue, and the photo on the right shows the existing development on site. Existing development on site consists of one 2-bedroom apartment, 2 1-bedroom apartments, and 1 studio apartment proposed for demolition, outlined in red on the site plan, and 1 single-family dwelling proposed to remain, outlined in blue on the site plan. The project is for a development plan to allow for the demolition of 4 existing apartments, the validation of an existing single-family dwelling, and the construction of 21 new 1 and 2-bedroom apartments. There are 11 new buildings proposed, 10 of which will be duplexes and 1 single-unit building. 29 parking spaces are proposed. Access will be provided off of Hollister Avenue. These are elevations of the proposed development. The project is being processed pursuant to the Housing Accountability Act. An SB 330 pre-application was submitted and deemed complete. Review of the project is limited to objective county policies and standards. Projects that are consistent with the objective policies and standards can only be disapproved or conditioned to a lower density if there will be a specific adverse impact upon the public health and safety that cannot be mitigated. Senate Bill 330 also limits the county to no more than 5 hearings on a project. The project is also being processed under state density bonus law. The site is zoned DR20 and is 1.07 acres, allowing for 21 units. The project proposes 22 units, requiring 1 additional unit under state density bonus law. The project proposes 2 very low income and 1 low income unit, which allows for a 30% density bonus. The applicant is requesting a 5% density bonus for the additional unit. The project is also allowed 1 concession, which can be a reduction in site development standards or modification of zoning code requirements. The project is requesting to modify the required 40% open space requirement. They are proposing 45% of the site as common visual landscape area, which would not qualify as common open space as it would not be for recreational use. The request complies with state law requirements as it allows for cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs. A request for a concession shall be granted unless the county makes a written finding based on substantial evidence that the concession does not result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs, that it would have a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety or a historic resource that cannot be mitigated, or that the concession would be contrary to state or federal law. The project is consistent with the Housing Accountability Act provisions and all objective policies in the comprehensive plan, including the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan, and objective standards in the County Land Use and Development Code. The project is consistent with objective policies regarding adequate services, biological resources, cultural resources, hillside and watershed protection, and water resources, and is consistent with objective ordinance standards, including the multiple unit and mixed use housing objective design standards, landscaping standards, height, setbacks, and parking requirements. The proposed project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 21159.25, the exemption for residential or mixed-use housing projects. Staff recommends that your commission make the required findings for approval of the project, including CEQA findings, determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 21159.25, and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval included as Attachment B to the staff report. Staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have a couple. No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that good staff report, and I found the written report very good as well. And for our conversation yesterday, because this, I think, is what, maybe the second 330 case that we are looking at. So I'm not going to get into deliberations, but this will be our future. However, I just want to double check. In terms of the affordability of the units on the property now, how was it that translated into what they're proposing with this project? Did they have to replace those, one for one, or how does that work exactly? Can you help?
Chair Bradley, for replacement units, so they're demolishing 4 units, And pursuant to the state density bonus law, if the income category of the renter households is unknown, it shall be presumed that the units are occupied by lower income renter households in the same proportion of lower income renter households to all renter households within the jurisdiction. Current data shows that 58% of renter households in the county earn within the lower income category, and therefore the project is subject to replacing the units with 3 lower income units. So they're proposing 2 very low income units and 1 low income unit.
So how is it that the applicant doesn't have that information? I guess I'm curious about that.
Chair Bradley, we didn't, they would have had to contact we didn't have the contact information for the current residents. And so working with HCD, we just decided to use the average income rates for the county.
Okay. Okay. And this is consistent with the zoning. This was rezoned to this density back in the Eastern Galita Valley Community Plan, so it's not more intense like what we just dealt with in the housing element, but the trade-off I find interesting in terms of the lack of the 40% open space, which was a real golden nugget in development plan standards. And so now, is this the first time that we've seen something where they're asking for landscaping to suffice? Does anybody know? It's a slightly different approach to open space.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I believe this is the first time that we've seen this concession. I think this was only the second project that we've had, so we haven't seen any concessions requested for landscaping, and I'm not sure of any in the pipeline that are requesting the same one. Most of the concessions I've seen are usually for height, setbacks, and parking.
Okay. That's a very good point. Thank you.
And,
Mr. Seer?
Chair Bradley, I would say a good amount of the SB 330 applications we've had so far are proposing concessions for open space requirements. But again, they're just pre-apps at this point, so we don't know exactly what they're going to be asking for until they submit their full project.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions at this time. Nobody else? Oh, Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, I notice it's admirable that there is a relocation payment or option program for existing residents. I was wondering, since I don't see it, are those existing residents going to be given any sort of an option or priority to rent the new units, given they have the capacity?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed, I'll defer that question to the applicant. I know he's prepared to answer.
Okay, one more question. I notice among the comment, there seems to be, due to the fact this property has about a 13% slope to it, there were concerns about stormwater management and a drainage plan. I noticed those are located in your report. Could you just make a statement regarding what you think is the adequacy of that drainage management program?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed, the applicant submitted a preliminary Tier 3 stormwater control plan, which includes permeable pavement for the parking stalls and drive aisles to reduce the amount of impervious surface area. The proposed concrete walkways will drain to surrounding landscaped areas, and there are bioretention basins in the southwest and northwest corners of the property. The project is conditioned to require a final Tier 3 stormwater control plan to be approved by Project Clean Water. Additionally, the grading plan will be reviewed by the county grading inspector when the project gets their grading permit.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions for right now.
Okay. Bishop Bark?
Page 3, the site photos, the right-hand site photo, what are we looking at?
Chair Bradley, Commissioner.
I know we're looking at bare ground, but in the distance.
Yeah, Chair Bradley, Commissioner Park, these are the existing units on site. So this, I believe, is the studio and one-bedroom apartment, and there's additional units behind it. The single-family dwelling is up in this corner. So those are proposed for demolition.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. All right, well, hearing no other questions from the commission, then we go to the applicant's presentation. And I have a quick correction to my ex parte communications. I did have an email exchange with a Mr. Cecilio, who's a neighbor, months and months ago, right after the sign went up on the property. It was just about his concerns with the project coming up, and I didn't engage too far because we had no staff report, but that was Mr. Cecilio. Thank you. And, okay, we have Mr. Roy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Lonnie Roy, the property owner's agent. I would like to thank Willow for her excellent presentation and then all of county staff for their efforts in getting the project to this point. The 22-unit housing project that is put forth for approval is of an appropriate design and scale for the neighborhood. The neighborhood is predominantly single-family homes. The project has been designed with a series of 2- and 1-family buildings separated by landscape area in order to maintain the appearance and feel of the neighborhood. This also allows the project to have the buildings step down with the existing site topography, reducing earthwork and general impacts on the site. The proposed units are of a modest size and scale. The average net unit size is approximately 845 square feet and are 2 stories tall. Majority of the structures are around 25 feet in height, with limited locations exceeding that due to retaining foundation walls. The architecture is of a simple Spanish vernacular that we believe has a charming quality to them. Overall, we believe the project will provide high standard of living for future residents while limiting impacts to neighboring properties. We understand that the surrounding neighbors have concerns regarding the proposed scale of the project and potential impacts on privacy and noise. As noted, the proposed buildings are well below the established height limit and meet the required setbacks. After meeting with the neighbors, we have offered to increase the height of the perimeter property line fence to 8 feet, the maximum allowed by code, and plant an Italian cypress hedge if they wish. In regards to their noise concerns, the development will have an on-site manager that will be tasked with enforcing the rules, including noise. We can provide the contact information of the manager to the neighbors who can reach out to them if they believe the tenants are not in compliance with the noise rules. Another concern of the neighbors is the off-site drainage from the property. The property is a rear draining lot with approximately 24 feet of fall from the highest elevation to the lowest elevation. Due to the slope and site soils, the property currently drains a substantial amount of water off-site. The proposed project addresses this issue by collecting and directing water to a basin at the southwest corner of the property, which includes a sump pump that will pump water to Hollister Avenue. We will be adding in further redundancies to the stormwater system by adding a second sump pump, battery backups for the pump, and adding a concrete V-ditch along the southerly and westerly property line to collect and maintain water on site. The pumps and V-ditch will be designed to handle flows for the 100-year storm event. To conclude, we believe that the proposed project is appropriate for the neighborhood and provides high-quality housing opportunities for the community. The owner is excited about this project and has been processing building permits at risk so the units can be built promptly after this approval. And to respond to some of the questions that are put forward, yes, tenants will be given the opportunity to apply and have the first right of refusal for the new units. And to speak a little bit to the questions regarding the requested concession for the open space, it's mostly due to trying to develop a project that we believe is more consistent with the neighborhood character by creating a bunch of separated buildings, as well as due to the slope on the site to create active recreational uses. You would end up having to tier and slope a significant portion of it. So we feel that the proposed approach with the buildings stepping down is more appropriate, and it provides the percentage of landscape area in lieu of that 40% for active recreation. I'm here for any more questions you may have. Thanks.
Don't leave. Commissioner Reed?
Oh, I have a couple of questions. First, I was looking at all the plot plans, and now you're going to have, what, 29 parking spaces. I'd like to know exactly where are they going to be. Are they going to be in that, what look like a curved structure or area adjacent to the road? If you could just point out where the cars are going to park.
Yeah,
And
it's.
can I just, you had no PowerPoint presentation yourself, so we should use staff slides, so maybe, there we go. Thank you.
If I had a laser pointer, I could point it to. It's a combination of garage, carport, and surface spaces.
Okay.
So for the existing single-family home at the top there, those have 2 spaces that are under a separate driveway to the right. And then there is surface parking around that loop and additional 2 spaces below building 11 there. The remainder are, building 1 has a 2-car garage, building 11 and 12 both have 4 carport spaces below them. And then if you can scroll a little bit further down, building 9 has an additional 4 garage spaces. So it's split between surface, garage, and carport.
Okay, well, yeah, with respect to the parking, this kind of piqued my interest when I was looking at the hose pull plan for the fire department. I was looking at all the red lines with you, and I would just try to envision people that live there, how far they're going to have to carry the groceries or carry a toddler or somebody who might be a little recalcitrant. They're going to be a long, long pull or drag from the apartment to the parking, or is it going to be more convenient? So, and then also in those walkways, are there going to be, since the elevation is changing, are there going to be stairways or ramp areas? That was just a question.
The site circulation to deal with the grade is used with stairways.
Okay. How is that going to conform with perhaps residents with disabilities if you have someone in a chair or something?
Yeah, it's part of the proposal with duplex structures and single-family structures. Certain accessibility code requirements are not required. And that decision was put in place early on to help deal with the grade and reduce grading impacts to the site.
Okay. I only have one more. This is with respect to your landscape plan. One of the things you mentioned, that's mentioned in this, in the response to the objective design standards, in that it says that with respect to plant materials, they're limited to drought-tolerant native and non-native species. I notice, are you familiar with the plants yourself, or is that out of your area?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
it's
just
more
noticed
in the drought tolerant, not necessarily
Right,
the
you
native
have a nice
species.
plant list. Most of them are drought tolerant. Looks a little thin with respect to California natives. And just in deference to the Board of Supervisors, which yesterday passed a move to declare May California Native Plant Month, no big deal. I just noticed you do have one ceanothus, a bay laurel, and the coast live oaks. I think your planting plan might be a little more attractive if you've incorporated some Archistophilus, manzanita, prostrate forms and others, maybe replace some of the Myoporum with those. You have one species of ceanothus, but it also could have great utility because there's quite a variety in that genus. And then finally, I noticed a number of the issues with respect to neighbors have to do with screening and looking into the backyards. I noticed you mentioned, it was mentioned that you might do a number of Italian cypress at the border, which are obviously far, far from native. I was just wondering if perhaps you might replace some of those palm trees with native, like toyon, which get pretty high, because the screening value of a palm tree reminds me of the old Charlie Brown cartoon where he's trying to hide behind a little sapling where his eyes are covered, but the rest of him sticking out to the palm. So that might help to satisfy more of the native plant goal and be much more effective in terms of screening. So, my comment.
Yeah, my response is I spoke to the property owner. The reason that this plant palette was put forward is it's consistent with the plant palettes on most of their other properties. So it's from a maintenance standpoint, his landscapers are familiar with it, but he's open to using a more native plant palette on this. And then regarding the screening with the neighbors, using some alternative with Italian cypress, that's definitely something we're open with. Italian cypress was just what was discussed with the neighbors, but we would consider an alternative plant material or planting solution to provide that screening.
Good, yeah, because I would consider the palm trees as a very poor element in terms of screening value. Nice you have a couple of the oak trees on the property line, but if you had some more, I think the appropriate foliage would go much farther than the palm trees in terms of screening. So, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cooney, do you have some questions?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Mr. Roy, I was particularly attentive to your comment regarding the staff member on site of the apartments once constructed. Is that a condition of the project?
To have the right of first refusal?
No, just the staff person who will
Oh.
be on site and
It is a requirement due to the number of units that are proposed. We either need to provide management, on-site management office, or have a manager that lives in one of the units. So the property owner has decided to do a manager that lives in one of the units. So they'll be there all day, and I know there's some issues that was brought to my attention with the current tenants that are on site, so noise has been a concern. So we intend to provide that contact information to the surrounding neighbors.
well, my concern is once the project's built and everybody's living together, what kind of assurance do the neighbors have that there is always going to be someone reachable that can attend to noise and other issues that come up?
I would say right now, it's just a requirement that we're required to meet with state ordinances, but I would say that a condition of approval could be added to this project to require that. And then if we do not comply with that, then the county can enforce those conditions of approval on the project. So I would recommend putting a condition of approval for the project to enforce that long term.
I agree with you.
Me too. Do you have any other questions?
Question for County Council. Can we add that kind of condition approval on SB 330? I have my doubts.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's important to remember that on a housing project like this that's subject to the Housing Accountability Act, we're really limited to applying the objective standards. And if the project meets all of those objective standards, the ability to deny the project is very limited, and recommend against imposing additional conditions that are not required to meet those objective standards. If the applicant wants to amend their project description or, voluntarily pursue some of those options, they could do that, but I think conditioning the project is probably ill-advised.
Well, I certainly agree with the concept, and it sounds like if you are telling us that state law requires it, I can see a perfect place for it to add to the project description right at the end of paragraph 2.
Yes, we would be okay with adding that to the project description, that an on-site manager will be provided.
Terrific. Okay, I had a couple other questions. Can we just go to the site plan and remind me, you talked about the 8-foot fence at the rear property line, because I didn't pick that up when I was looking at the elevations online. Where is that? Can someone scroll that for me?
Yeah, so currently a 5-foot fence is proposed, and the neighbors requested an 8-foot fence along the south, east, and westerly property lines, which we are amenable to.
Oh, so 3 property lines,
Correct.
contiguous, okay.
Correct.
All right. And in terms of can we go to the landscape plan? We'll take a break after this. Yeah, definitely. Well, public comment. We still have public comment. Do we have the landscape plan anywhere? Okay, sorry. I see it's not on the PowerPoint, okay. While that's happening, I concur with everything that Commissioner Reed suggested. I'm not so sure about Manzanita because this landscape plan is going to be the play area and the usable area. So like native ground covers might be smarter than, sharp shrubs like Manzanita.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
There are a great many different genera of manzanita. Some are prostrate forms
Okay.
that get higher than 6 inches. Some are trees. Others are a whole variety of shrubs. So it's a very, very diverse genus.
Okay,
So.
all right. We'll leave that to you to figure out how to do more natives in honor of Native Plant Week. So this is the first case I've seen where a development plan is asking to use its required landscape areas as your designated open space in development plans. Otherwise, you would have had to have a 40% open space area as presumably a common area for the homeowners association. So this is going in a much different direction than the cases I remember from 10 or 15 years ago. And I just want to make sure that what you're providing is something that's going to be usable for these units. Because there's a lot of building and not a lot of green space, and that's the one concession you're requesting, right?
Correct. And
Can
we-
you,
we-
maybe it's good for you to articulate why that concession, because it's instead of a height or a setback concession, which are problematic sometimes for neighbors, but tell us why this makes the most sense for you.
It makes the most sense due to how we wanted to construct the project and due to the existing site topography. To create 40% landscape area that is an active recreational space, those typically need to be relatively flat areas. And when the site has 13% slope, it would result in significant retaining walls or significant sloping areas that would raise that grade up. So it'd just be very costly and inefficient way to develop the site in order to do that. So we are providing 40%, but yeah, it is ornamental landscape area. It is not active recreational area.
Okay. Okay, and this is the cue. You are right across from the Page Youth Center. That's significant for any family that's going to be living here. I mean, they could jaywalk across Hollister Avenue because it'll be so congested that they will be able to get there between cars. But I mean, that's an incredible facility, and you are in with 500 feet of it, so that helps a lot too. Okay, did staff have anything more to say? But thank you for the pictures to illustrate my point. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or?
I do not. Thank you so much for hearing
All
the
right,
project.
thank you. I'd like to take a break at this point, and then we'll start with public comment as soon as we come back. Let's give ourselves 15 minutes for now, and then we'll start public comment at, what would that be, 10:27? Okay. Thanks, everyone, for that break. This is where we are going to start our public comment on this item, and I have 4 speaker slips. Do we have anyone online? Okay. So I'm going to begin with J. Michael Cecilio. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'll time it for you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thanks for having us. I've just got a punch list of a number of issues that have been mentioned somewhat this morning. I'm just going to mention them again and some concerns that we have as neighbors. I'm right next door at 4565, and there's an erosion control issue, and they did mention something about down in the southwest corner, which is down the bottom of my property. But I've got mud about 4 inches from the last few storms in my property. I've been cleaning up. So I'm hoping they can do something about that and battery backup on any sort of a drainage issue. And about the privacy issue, it's 10 feet in from the property line, 25 feet is looking directly down onto our homes and backyards and children, and so we're going to be losing quite a bit of privacy. And noise issues as well. There's parties, extreme parties there almost every weekend with live bands, and so we actually talked about possibly a CMU or block wall as a sound barrier, 8 foot versus a fence. And then location of buildings. I mean, one thing that I even thought about is maybe doing 1 story around the perimeter and doing 3 story in the center if they wanted that much of a dense property in there. So we wouldn't be looming on each other, if anything. So we would have privacy from both our homes and that development. It does seem like a very dense development. There's nothing like it anywhere nearby. And I know all these notices are 3 people within 300 feet. And I truly believe it's going to affect people more like 3 miles around it. And I think we'd have, anyway, more people concerned about that. You mentioned the youth center across the street. I have 6 children and 6 children, 9 grandchildren, and we use that youth center quite a bit. But it's closed to the public. You can't. We used to try to fly our kites out in the baseball field, and they won't let you in there. And you have to be a member of the gym. So it's not like that could be usable space for these people. And even if it were, there's an issue of them running back and forth across the street. There's been 4 people killed since I've lived there, and they just recently put, they had kids getting knocked over left and right on their bikes over by San Marcos High School down the street, and then cars parking out on the street illegally, causing bicycles and traffic to, it's just very dangerous. It's where the road goes from 4 lanes to 2, and people are speeding. I've been honked at and flipped off every other day at least, trying to get in my own driveway, and often can't even get out of my driveway. That's about a quarter of my list. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
And love to continue this if we could. We do all have a number of concerns, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, our next speaker will be Lisa Macker.
Hello, I'll try to keep this nice and short, and I'll just be staring at my notes here. Lisa Macker, I live at 4568 Ahe Drive. Want to thank you all for your service. I too have done public service in Santa Barbara, and I know what a huge load it is to carry, so I respect that you'll listen to us, to our concerns. So I want to also mention, I understand the need for housing, and I didn't oppose the homeless shelters. My concerns here have to do primarily with safety and the density. So it's not just against housing in general. I'm not opposed to that. I understand the great need in Santa Barbara. I'd like to recommend a continuance of your approval. I'm going to say that out front to a future time after you've had an opportunity to fully look at our concerns as the immediate neighbors. there's two things. There's general and there's specific, and please give me a 1-minute warning.
Okay.
So on the specific, I live right at the southwest corner, and I experience flooding regularly. Those of you that know Ahe Drive, the county's out there all the time. It turns into a river. With these recent rains, it's been awful. And the reason I want to point this out is because I did talk to Mr. Roy about this. The plans are wholly insufficient. And since we all met, this is the good thing of meeting with citizens, since we've met, he's made recommendations to change those plans, doubling the pump size, putting in battery backup, putting in concrete swales instead of dirt swales. It's not anywhere written. I have his emails to me, but I didn't see this anywhere in the public comment. I want to make sure that those promises are included in the plan. This morning, we were actually also emailing about the sump capacity, which is made for a 100-year flood. Well, we've had close to that 3 times in the last 2 years. I have over about 18 to 24 inches of mud on my property that's come down specifically from this property that's being developed. I sent videos to the county, to Willow, it's a river of water that comes off of that property through my yard. So with all that concrete, I'm wondering how are we, how is their proposal dealing with these problems? There's just not enough porous material. Also, Mr. Roy commented that, I don't know the right technical terms, but the soils at the base on Ahe Drive do not have absorption qualities. So it pools up, it creates a river. It's a dangerous situation, and they need to be accountable for making sure it works. Most important, though, like I said, their plans are inadequate, and without us having this back and forth and taking the time to talk through it, it wouldn't have been dealt with. So moving on to the general, I would like that considered for the general complaints. I don't have the privacy issues as the other people do. My land is at the corner. But those other 3 sides, a 10-foot setback, there, Susan here has had her home 30 years. Her whole property is going to be open for view. And look at item 5.3, that table states you can increase the setback if there's problems due to light and privacy concern. I think the setback should be increased.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Gregory Hillis, excuse me.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Gregory Hillis, and my wife Maricel Cruz and I own the property at 4560 Ahe Drive. We oppose the development plan and the proposed exemption. I think that's an important thing to include as they are currently stated in the plan at 4555 Hollister, and we'd like to express our concerns and request modifications. Just before the meeting this morning, it was brought to my attention that in your findings from the previous meeting, you found that the proposed project will not be detrimental to the comfort, convenience, general welfare, health, and safety of the neighborhood, and will not be incompatible with the surrounding area, and we disagree with that. I want to affirm or echo the concerns of our neighbors with regard to traffic on Hollister. Is bound to have an enormous impact. I think we all recognize that, and it's something that certainly needs attention. And also we acknowledge the drainage issues, and we share that concern. But as regards our specific property, our property is contiguous with the entire southern property line of the proposed project, and as such, the 2-story, 25-foot buildings, those are buildings 7 through 10 on the site plan, will be built 10 feet from our single-story house. This will be an enormous intrusion and invasion of our privacy, and our neighbors and ourselves have requested story poles, which were not built, so that you, as the commissioners, can get a sense of exactly how great an impact that will have. We have a question about the existing building labeled Unit 1 on the site plan at the northeastern quadrant. Under the exemption request, it is to remain as it is and appears to serve as the basis for that exemption. We want to know, what is the purpose of this exemption? Why has the developer asked for this exemption? Rather than maintaining the building as it is, we request and suggest that the building, that the buildings that are directly on our property lines be moved to this area, and that area be developed as part of the development rather than continuing on with that. All right, let's see, how am I doing on time? Not very well.
Half a minute.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I wanted to say was the noise. The noise has been an ongoing issue, and we anticipate with the increased density that the noise, especially if the current tenants relocate into the new development, that this will continue to be an issue, but even greater because of the increased number of inhabitants. And so at the time that we met Mr. Roy, we requested not an 8-foot fence, but an 8-foot wall. And I'd like to reiterate that that is our request to mitigate the sound impact. The noise has been an enormous concern of ours for years, and we anticipate it only to grow worse.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to stop
Okay,
there.
thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hillis. All right, our last speaker is Sarah Reeves. Susan Reeves, I apologize.
Thank you all for taking our concerns today. I really appreciate you listening to our concerns. I am requesting a continuance of approval until you do address our concerns. We've all sent emails in. I think Willow and everybody else has had access to this. I don't know if we need to leave those with you today or not. I am requesting lower density, that there would not be 22 units or 11 buildings because of the amount of traffic, noise. I am concerned at the 10-foot property line. It says here 10 feet except where the larger setback is required by the commission for light, air, and privacy. I have just one little measly picture here of my backyard, but I can submit that today of my fence, which is shared by a 45-foot section on where buildings number 11 and 10 are in plan, especially number 10 is right in where my backyard is. And I have an 8-foot fence, and 17 feet of those buildings, because they're 25 feet high, will be up, looming over my backyard and looking in and blocking my sunlight and seeing everything that's going on in my backyard. And I'm absolutely, totally opposed to that. And I am in agreement with all of my neighbors. Greg and Marisol have 4 of those buildings that will be looking over their fence into their backyard all along their property line. So I think there's too many buildings. We could move them to the front of the property where what Greg was saying. We could move single story. There's a lot of things you can do with these plans that would not impinge on our privacy, our sunlight, noise level, and also with the traffic that is going to be, if there's 22 units, you can at least believe there will be 44 people living in there, and they only have 29 parking spaces. Where are those other cars going to go? It just seems like there's too many buildings for the amount of, for the area, not enough open space, and the setback of 10 feet is too close to our property lines. I would request that the 2 stories be put in the front towards Hollister, and maybe single stories near our property line, so we're not having people looking over our backyards. Let's see what else. Invading my privacy, sunlight, noise level. There's this proposed project will not be detrimental to comfort. It is absolutely detrimental to my comfort and our neighbors. Convenience, general welfare, health, and safety. Those things aren't, you're saying that it's not, but it is. It's all detrimental in those areas. Let's see. I can't think of anything else at the moment. I think I covered everything. I hope that you guys will consider all of these things, and I'll submit this picture. I don't know who to submit that to. Okay. Thank you for hearing our concerns today, and we hope that you won't approve the project today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reeves. I believe that's the end of our public comment requests, right, on this item?
We do not have any speakers online.
Okay. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close the public comment period of this and then turn it back to the commission for questions raised during that. Normally, we start with staff. I have a couple questions from stuff that came up, so do we want to start with those questions and then you can add response? Okay. Okay, so this might actually warrant having the applicant come up because there were some points made here that maybe deserve some further discussion, and maybe we want to actually have the applicant come back up to answer a couple questions. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Hi. Thank you for coming back. First, you know what? I'm going out of order. Does anybody else have any other questions for the applicant's agent here? Is it just me? Okay. You heard the public testimony, and there were several specific things, and it sounded like maybe you were in discussions with them about the sump pump, and maybe you could consider the concrete block wall. I'm almost inclined to ask for a continuance so that you can continue those discussions and come back with a couple things that they're asking for. Because this never went to BAR? This doesn't do BAR, right? This is
No, it
right.
doesn't need
And
to go.
so some of these questions are going to be raised in this kind of a process because we're not architects. But I'm wondering if you would consider the change to the project description about that, but also would you consider some of the stuff that's been brought up, not the setbacks distance, not the unit count. Has there been any discussion with the neighbors about how the site plan has been organized to have the units where they're placed? Is there any chance to look at putting some of the density in the middle of the site? You're far along, I understand that, but
Yeah, at this point, we are not considering any changes to the building placements. With how the buildings are organized and how far they are away from each other, moving them closer to each other results in increased cost by increasing fire ratings of walls and items like that. So we aren't considering any changes to the site plan. As I mentioned earlier, we have committed to some changes after meeting with the neighbors. One of those items was increasing the fence height to 8 feet. I know they want a block wall, but that represents a significant cost. A rough cost estimate of that is around $250,000 because of the significant length of property line that we have and having it be 8 feet tall. So it just represents a significant cost that we can't really bear. So we are offering the 8-foot high fence and additional landscape screening. As mentioned, they brought up an Italian cypress hedge, which we are amenable to. And as Lisa mentioned, we are having our civil engineer in the construction documents make modifications to improve the redundancy of the stormwater system. So originally, the construction documents have an earthen swell along the southerly and westerly property line to convey water that would be watershed to those areas to the basin. In the southwest corner, we have agreed to do a concrete V-ditch that has capacity for the 100-year storm. In addition, we agreed to add a second pump to the sump that's in that basin that pumps the water up to Hollister Avenue, and we have agreed to add battery backup to those pumps.
so are those things are not on the plans that we have in front of us right now, right? Those are things that have been generated since these were posted?
Yeah, well, the stormwater ones are really more construction document level information, so that typically wouldn't necessarily be on the plans. The fencing and the Italian cypress, yeah, that is something that we have agreed to since these plans.
Okay. Okay, let's have questions from other commissioners, thankfully. Commissioner Roy? Reed? Commissioner Reed.
Well, I know it's confusing, Roy and Reed. And you mention applicant's name, it confuses me because it's the same as my first, nonetheless. Couple of questions with respect to drainage, and you have the sumps, and the sump is, sufficient to accommodate a 100-year storm, and you're doubling. What is the capacity of those pumps? If the sump were full, how long would it take them to empty it? Do you have
So the 100-year event, the pumps would have to have a capacity of 915 gallons per minute for the 100-year. So the pumps that are specified have a capacity between 100 and 1,000 gallons per minute. So one pump is adequate for the 100-year, and then so we were adding a second pump. So combined between them, it's up to 2,000 gallons per minute for
So
the
you
capacity.
think that's adequate reserve capacity?
Correct.
In that case. All right. Also, it was mentioned, we have a limitation of 5 hearings with respect to this because it's a SB 330 project. Have you had, how many prior hearings have you had? What are we up to now? Has there been one prior hearing?
This is the first hearing.
This is the first. Okay. Just so there's potential of 4 to go. All right. Hopefully not that many, but the potential that was when the limit would occur. All right. That's all my questions for you.
Thank you. Commissioner Park?
Mr. Roy, just now you addressed some of the concerns or suggestions of the neighbors, and I heard you address the block wall with regard to cost and so forth. And I heard you address location of the buildings, and that would increase construction costs and present a lot of design issues to push them together. But what I didn't hear you address was the idea that I believe Mr. Cecilio proposed, that the outer buildings be 1-story and the inner buildings be 3-story, if I'm restating it so many words. Is that something you considered, and can you tell us what your inner discussions were?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it would add significant cost to the project. One, because of how we've set up the project in terms of grading with 1 and 2 family buildings. By going to 3 stories and increasing density of certain buildings, we would get into a different occupancy, and it would result in different accessibility and different code requirements that would increase the site cost to grade it a different way, a more flat way. And it would also increase the cost because construction costs for a 3-story building are significantly more than a 2-story.
Or your footings would be very different in there, wouldn't they?
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks.
Following up on that, actually, what is that? The height limit in this zone is 35 feet?
Chair Bradley, yes, and exceeding that height limit would require another concession, and they are requesting one, and they're allowed one.
Okay, so maybe the 3-foot thing is not going to work out, but, okay, so staff, I sort of skipped over you because I thought there was things that the applicant could answer for us easily, and did you have any comments you want to make best after public comment?
I don't have anything additional to add, but I can answer any additional questions.
No, I do. This has always scared me about how these new housing laws are causing us to be the BAR and the Planning Commission all at once. And so we had no story polls, no BAR process, which is a very valuable process in this county because it really works out a lot of the issues that we're talking about today. And it would have brought you to the neighbors in a different forum, and maybe it wouldn't have been as difficult today. So once this case, and this is, for future 330 cases and other things, once this case leaves this hearing room, then what does it do? It goes to staff for plan checking all these details?
Chair Bradley, they would be required to submit their prior to issuance items from the conditions in attachment B, and after that, get their grading permits and building permits.
I would actually consider a continuance, just for you to have a conversation with these folks that you're going to be, I mean, I'm thrilled that I support the case. And let me just say a couple things. I think that the case is good. I think that the design is reasonable. The concession that you've asked for is reasonable, and I like that over the height or setback intrusion. For the neighbors, the 10-foot setback is the required by zone. The people could come in and build this in a more intense fashion, in a far more intense fashion. So I'm inclined to approve it. I'm just not sure if a continuance is going to get the neighbors to understand that any better, and if the further discussion between the applicant and the neighbors is going to allay the concerns by the neighborhood. I don't know, and I'd be very interested in hearing from other commissioners on that. Commissioner Park.
And you're asking for a comment on the
Continuance concept.
On continuance. It is your district, and that makes me want to favor what you want to do. It also, you are the person with the most specific planning experience here, and I think you, among all commissioners, will best understand how this deviation from the norms, not the norms that are now established by law, but by how we've done planning in the past, how they will manifest themselves. So I will be inclined to second that motion, and but I will want to state some of my own reasons for that when the time comes.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, I have a question for staff as well as county council. Since this is an SB 330 project, and I'm going to ask this perhaps because I'm naive, or perhaps because I'm in the minority of commissioners who have not been blessed with a law degree. With respect to SB 330, in your opinion, have any of the issues that have been brought up rise to a sufficient level to justify denial on our part?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Reed. So under the Housing Accountability Act, there's really limited basis for disapproval of a project. It would have to have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and that's defined in the code. And the legislature has made clear that that's a really rare finding, that it's not something that they would expect to see very often. Staff has laid out in the staff report that this project complies with all of the existing and applicable objective standards. So it's up to your discretion to determine whether you could make a finding for disapproval, but staff has set forth that it's compliant with objective standards, and it's a pretty high bar to disapprove a housing project that complies with objective standards.
Yeah, because I take note of the one line here. Objective means involving no personal or subjective judgment by a public official and being uniformly verifiable by reference to an external uniform benchmark or criterion available and knowable by both the applicant and proponent and the public official.
So there would really have to be a concrete standard that the developer is aware of when they submit this application that, demonstrates a public safety impact.
Which is a significant limitation on our freedom or able to decide to deny.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to follow up.
Chair Bradley.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Park? Oh, I'm sorry. Did
No,
you
I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Kim. I just wanted to add to that. Staff really, we're learning, trying to keep up with these state laws as well. We did a very thorough review of every objective standard that we could find in the comp plan, in the zoning code. We still work with all of the other departments to clear it for all safety issues. We made sure it cleared all the objective design standards. We can't force them to do stuff that makes it economically infeasible. And so staff feels pretty confident that this project meets all of the county's requirements that they put forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Park?
Question of staff. Everyone's been referring to objective, and objective can mean different things in different contexts. And when you speak to, it meets all the objective standards. Is that including the objective design standards ordinance we enacted earlier this year?
That is correct.
Okay,
Mr.
thanks.
Park, yep.
Ms., you can sit down.
Thank you.
I forget the name, Mr. Roy. Okay, well, I'm actually inclined to approve the case today. And let's just go through the reasons why. I think it does meet all of the objective design standards. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Seward. And I think that it could be developed with far, far more units. The neighborhood really has to understand that. This commission is going to struggle with this for several years, and we've already struggled with it with the housing element. So it's a big empty lot. It's going to get housing on it. I think that this applicant has done a pretty good job of trying to address the compatibility with the neighborhood as best they can, given what the state is mandating us to do. So I'm inclined to approve it, and I would make that motion. We do want to have one cleanup item on the project description as stated by the applicant. If we can get to that. Oh, yeah, the project, I don't know what the right wording is, but the project will include a caretaker and residence on the site. That's probably simple enough.
Madam Chair, what we have, excuse me.
Okay.
So what we have shown on the screen and underlined, currently we show the applicant will provide an on-site manager and telephone contact number available to the public.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I would make a motion to approve, as staff has recommended, make the required findings for the approval of the project as specified in attachment A of the staff report, including our CEQA findings. Determine the project to be exempt from CEQA pursuant to Government Code 21159.25, included as attachment C, and approve the project case number 22 DVP 0004, subject to the conditions included as attachment B as modified at today's hearing. That would be my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion?
We're at deliberations now, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I
So
probably
I want
zipped
to
ahead.
express some comments. There are things I really do like and things I really don't like about this. In general, I appreciate the scope of this project and size. I'm sort of disappointed in our whole housing element process that what we're looking at is a half dozen, maybe it's a little less, projects that are 1,000 units plus. And I think that's bad planning, okay? It's just bad planning. Good planning is taking infill in existing neighborhoods and things like that and adding in the housing we need. I much prefer projects like this. Was it 22 units or whatever? And sneaking it into a residential neighborhood. I think that we have built way too many tract-type neighborhoods throughout this county. And if we went back to 1910-style America, where we mixed in multiple units and single units and commercial and all that, especially along something like Hollister, we'd be much better off. So I like that about this project. One thing I like about it is I think it has 2 very low-income units and 1 low-income unit. And when you have massive projects and you stick all those in a ghetto, it's really not the right way to do planning, and we've known that since the 1960s. So I like it here that those people that live there will feel like they're part of things, and that's the right way to do it. I like the architecture in general. I think you've kept it to 2-story, and it looks attractive, and that's all good. Some things I don't like. I don't like this process. I don't like the fact that here we have neighbors who wrote some extremely powerful and well-written letters, and I want to compliment you on that. There was one letter in particular, I can't remember which of you wrote it, but it was like a staff report. It just mapped things out and what your objections were and so forth. And I'm very appreciative of that. It makes it much easier to do my job. But I'm disappointed that you got, 12 minutes to speak and nothing else on something like this. It's not your fault. It's not the chair's fault. It's the fault of a process that basically brings something like this as a matter of original jurisdiction instead of an appeal. What that also means is this did not get BAR review, so we're picking something with the chickens and going through this, and when the BAR really should have done all that, and they should have looked at all these design issues, and they should have looked at landscaping and all these things. So I love the idea that we've got SB 330, SB 35, Builder's Remedy, state bonus density law that will bring us projects that bring these kind of denser but smaller projects in front of us. That's a good thing. I hate the idea that we're now going to become kind of a penny ante BAR. And that's why I was going to support your motion if you made one for continuance, because if I'm going to act like a BAR, I'd like to take another look at the details and look at the required findings and do a little bit better job. This seems rushed to me. So those are my observations. And since you're not making a motion to continue it, I won't second the motion to continue it.
Okay. Commissioner Cooney.
Madam Chair, thank you. I accept and agree with many of the comments by my fellow commissioners. This is an unhappy time for me as a planning commissioner to see people who have put their life savings and efforts into building a neighborhood. The communication of the people that have testified before us among themselves is a very healthy outcome of this process. But I think and fear that they are just the beginning of public opposition to projects to come before us. Mr. Roy did concede to amend the project description to include something I think that in the future will be very valuable for the neighborhood. They're going to have someone they can communicate with to address things like noise and inconvenience, but it's not going to address the issue of height, imposition of buildings into their heretofore enjoyable open space. So, what do I do as a protest to Sacramento? Say I won't approve this project. I've thought about that, and it's not just this project, it's our entire housing effort. The jurisdictions that have tried that, they may feel better about trying it, but it's not been successful. It's been expensive, time-consuming, and in the end, not improving the process at all to throw it into court and delay. So I think this is an example of a case where I'm going to rely heavily on the commissioner's feelings and opinions in whose district it is, and we have an exceptional commissioner, not only knows more about planning than the rest of us put together, but very dearly cares about people living in her district. So I will not oppose the project as a false hope. I think continuance would just continue the pain, but there is evidence that this developer, at least the representative of the developer, is willing to listen to project changes that would not impose a great deal of expense. And that needs to be pursued on a neighborhood level. And I think that's the formula for success in the future.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes. You almost called me Commissioner Roy, didn't you? Yeah. You know, this process, you know, in a more perfect world, we would be able to accommodate a more lengthy and robust process in terms of developing this project, but I think it's pretty clear the constraints that apply here that limit our flexibility in this process. But I think one thing that has come out, it appears the applicant is open-minded and responsive to the concerns of the neighbors who will be impacted like this, and I would certainly hope he continues to accommodate those throughout the process and hopefully make it more acceptable and less impactful to the affected neighbors. I recall several times in my own life, everybody is uncomfortable when the last lot in the neighborhood gets developed, particularly if it's a neighboring lot that is not within the same character as the rest of the neighborhood. But two things appear to be inevitable, particularly in the parts of California where we live, where it is more desirable. Those inevitabilities are growth and change. So hopefully, as I said, the bridge between developer and neighbors can be maintained to where the end project will be achieve a higher level of acceptability and accommodation. So that's pretty much my comments before moving on. You know, like I said, in an ideal situation, we would have more latitude and freedom in terms of accommodating this. And finally, I'll say with respect to this, with respect to the housing element, with respect to the rezones, where so much of what county does and planning department does are in response to mandates and directives coming from Sacramento, perhaps people should more carefully consider the sort of representation they select to send to Sacramento who move or oppose this sorts of legislation. So that's my final comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Park.
Yeah, I want to make one additional comment that I meant to state earlier, but I forgot. I think that Commissioner Bridley asked some excellent questions about the landscaping concession, you know, going to 45% landscaping as opposed to the 40% common open space. I had a thought while that was in front of us, and I wanted to express that. And I think it's important to express it here in deliberations and address that issue, show that we're paying attention to it. And it's good to get it in the record because this matter may go on to the Board of Supervisors, and it's useful for staff to know what our thinking was, and as well as the applicant. And that is, with that topography, I think residents of the project might find the common open space to be not very desirable or usable. On the other hand, by adding 5% more open space for the landscaping, which is appreciable, I think they'll like that because it will add more open space and it'll create more privacy for these duplexes and so forth. So I think that the residents there, and this open space is for their benefit. It's not the public's not going to be wandering around there, but for the residents who would benefit from this, I think they'll actually appreciate this concession and think it's a better idea for them.
Okay, so before we have a motion and a second on the floor, and before we vote, I just wanted to emphasize to the applicant's representative that we are counting on you to make good with what you said, because you will have other projects before us, and this will be one that is emblazoned in my memory, because I feel like I may have rushed it, but I rushed it to, I can't remember if it was Commissioner Reed or Commissioner Park or Commissioner Cooney, but elongating this isn't going to help the pain. And so the best chance that the neighbors have is to work with the applicant directly and come to the best solution you can. Our hands are so tied, you really have no idea. Neighbors don't know how hard this is for us, and it's particularly hard for me in this district. But I just want to make that emphasis one more time. And I want to have a little bit of a discussion after we finish this vote about maybe some further discussions with staff about architectural review as we get through these things. So with that, we have a motion. We have a second by Commissioner Reed, and we have the revised language. So I think we're ready for a roll call.
Commissioner Cooney.
Aye.
Commissioner Park.
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Chair Bridley.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. I don't know what to do with this, but obviously this commission is going to have more and more anxiety and concerns and potentially continuing cases because we don't have the S-bar, C-bar, M-bar, and N-bar, all our BARs. Can we put this on as a discussion item for some agenda in the near future? Because this was the first one, but when I think of what we just did with the rezones, it's going to be crazy. And whether it's an architectural contract to staff so that you have some extended staff that has an AIA behind their name, or, I mean, I appreciate what Mr. Seward said, but I also know, you know, we've got a lot of planners that may not understand some of the details of these intense plans. And, you know, I've already expressed concern about how are you even going to get these things through plan check. So can we just have a minute to talk about that as a concept for some sort of solution?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, a future meeting, yeah, not now.
Yes, but what I want to tell you what it is I'm thinking. And how about we move to my director's report, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking as part of
What a
that.
perfect segue. It's time for the director's report now, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't take long. I won't take long. On this particular topic, you know, of course, we have our objective.
Thank you.
We had our objective design standards that were adopted, which are very detailed and were prepared by design professionals, essentially. And we are talking internally about having either a chair of our BAR or another design professional work with the staff to confirm compliance with those objective design standards. Because those standards are more than any design guideline we've ever had. It lays out pretty clearly the kinds of things that you need to do with modulating the face of a structure or roof lines, the entries, window placement, all kinds of direction that we wouldn't have normally provided. So that's the first step. But I think there is a space where we would want to have some assistance in determining compliance with those standards.
That would be awesome, because when we had the design standards in front of us, and I'm reading them and I'm understanding, okay, if I was an applicant and I had a case with, 500 units, I'd be thinking, my poor planner, who's going to have to actually go through all those details and all those sheets. And I'm thinking, can't we have some way for the professionals in town to have a segue into that? So if there's some way you can figure that space, that would be helpful. And then maybe that could be part of the staff report, or that could be a separate memo from that person without dragging the case through a bunch of BAR meetings, because we know that can happen. And that's exactly what the housing law is trying to prevent. So I'd be very interested.
So we're working towards that. Yep. Because
Okay.
we know this is going to, with the housing projects that are coming, and some of them will be ministerial in nature, and all multifamily housing has to comply with these objective design standards anyway. So we recognize that there's a gap there, and we will be addressing it.
Okay. Commissioner Reed?
I just, one perspective on that. Well, I realize the discussion was not as robust had it been actually occurred during a hearing with the Board of Architectural Review, but I did find applicants, responses to the objective design standards, which were included in this, to be very, very comprehensive and very to the point, because I did go through every one of them, having looked at a lot of prints in the past and things like that, so I do appreciate that. But indeed, something is lost in the absence of a real open and public discussion, as would have occurred had it been subject to a BAR hearing.
Right, and it's not, I don't think it's reasonable to expect that the Planning Commission plays that role.
I want to wrap this up because I don't know if we're agreeing to try to agendize it as just maybe it's a segment of your director's report at some point in the future when you
Yeah,
figure out
when we
how a
identify the specific solution that we're going to
Okay.
bring forward, but we know that it needs to happen and soon because we will be getting more and more projects coming in.
So
under the
I
housing element.
would also not be shy in the future to ask for story polls and continue an item for that. I mean, if it falls to us and the BAR isn't going to do that kind of an analysis, I wouldn't be shy about saying, I want to continue this until there's story polls, or whether we work with staff ahead of time to say, before it comes to the PC, let's get the story polls up so at least we know what we're looking at. And that normally happens during BAR, and then they're often taken down by the time it comes to PC. So maybe that's something we want to talk about further. I just.
How often do we do story polls? We do, okay.
I'll just put that out there as a little placeholder.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration.
Okay.
So I wanted to move on to what's been happening at the Board of Supervisors. I don't think I've been here since we went for the work program on the 2nd of April. So
We haven't been here either, so.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So the board approved the work program, which we didn't brief you on this year, but we could certainly provide a briefing to you on that if you would be interested. Part of the reason we hadn't come in advance is that we were pressed for time, but also it's housing element season, yeah. So if the PC is interested in hearing what the LRP is going to be working on, I'm happy to have a briefing on that. Or you can refer to the work program. But mostly we're going to be working on the circulation element, the safety element, housing element implementation. Then we have some ordinance amendment packages that we're working on that the board directed us to undertake, the telecom packages, and now we have a new ordinance cannabis that we're going to be working on. So that
I'd definitely be interested in having a briefing on that, even though it's post Board of Supervisors. Does everyone concur?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to have. I can have
We
Alex.
have a couple light agendas coming up, so we can find that it's not time sensitive.
Yeah. Then they approved the changes that the Coastal Commission made to our child care ordinance amendment packages, and we moved that back to the Coastal Commission for final action. Cannabis odor monitoring was yesterday. So we had a lengthy staff report. I think it was about 17-page staff report. And I think it would be of great interest to many of you on the commission. I'm happy to circulate it to you on what's been happening with odor complaints and compliance and monitoring. The board asked us to come back with that report because they had concerns about the persistent odor that we're finding in the Carpinteria Valley. Primarily, that was the key reason. So what we ended up with yesterday was direction from the board to modify the code in a number of ways. One is, and the biggest problem that we've had is, we have a threshold in the code that says you're in violation if odor is experienced or detected in the residential zone. And what happens for our staff is we get a complaint, and often complaints are, I was driving on 192 and it was smelly. We don't get very much detail about what the complaint is. And even when we do, by the time we go out to verify it, the odor's gone. And then we can't tell where the odor's coming from because the grows are so close to one another. So it's been sort of an impossible tool to work with. So we said to the board, look, we need a better tool. We need something else to use. And so the board directed us to work with our consultant, Geosentech, to identify a tool. And maybe it is, we're going to look at whether or not it makes any sense to establish an odor limit at a property line. I think that's may not be the direction we go, but we're going to look at that. We're thinking more about establishing a limit and a threshold for an area where we have hotspots. Because you'll notice in our staff report, there are 3 zones where we have consistent complaints. And we haven't been able to confirm them. I think we have, do we have 1 confirmed? No, 0 confirmed odor complaints. So that means we haven't been able to push growers into improving their technology, although many have voluntarily done it. And of course, the commission has required 4 different growers to install it over a period of time. So we're going to establish a new threshold so that we can use that to verify complaints, so then we can then push the growers where there's odor to upgrade their systems. The other thing we're going to be doing is modifying the coastal zoning ordinance to streamline and make ministerial any amendments to an odor abatement plan that are geared towards improving their odor abatement system. Because we've had circumstances where growers have wanted to, but then they feared the appeals and the process that it would take. So we want to solve that problem. One of the other problems we wanted to solve was the being able to determine run times for the vapor phase systems. Right now, we can't, historically we could, because everybody was using Mark Byers' system and using EcoSorb, which is a product of that company. And we would be able to get run times from his company. When growers stopped using the EcoSorb but continued to use the vapor phase equipment, they no longer provided the runtime. So we have no idea for those growers if they're turning off the vapor phase at night or what's happening. So there's a piece of equipment that's not terribly expensive that can be installed on these systems so that we can track when they're running and not running. So we're going to be doing that. Let me just double check my notes. I just want to make sure I'm getting everything for you. Let's see. The threshold, the ministerial path. Oh, we wanted to add annual inspections once the quarterly inspections are over. Right now, the Planning Commission has a condition of approval that we developed in one of our first permit hearings for a cannabis item. So they all get quarterly reviews in the first year of operation. But we don't have anything after that, so we're going to establish an annual inspection after that. For in perpetuity, we're going to be doing annual inspections to make sure their equipment's running and whatnot. And then another issue that we're going to be studying is this question of power. There's a lot of opinions being expressed by growers, and they're in both camps, right? Some are saying power is available and they should be doing it, and others are saying it's way too expensive for me, or I can't get a C to respond, or we don't think there's sufficient power in the valley for everybody to have all these systems. We're going to analyze it with Geosentech and figure out, we're going to work with SCE and see what the situation is. So that's the other piece of it. And I think, and then lastly, we're going to study, Supervisor Hartman feels very committed to her community to try and see what could be done for outdoor grows. I mean, there's a limitation on that because they're outdoor, but other outdoor facilities have ways to mitigate odor, or they attempt to mitigate odor, like landfills and whatnot. So we're going to identify some options for possible changes for outdoor grows. And that is what happened with that item yesterday. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
No, I actually attended that hearing. I thought it was, well, because I think it has some interesting scientific discussion, potentials for discussion, and there's definitely going to be a lot of meat on the bone with that one. And apparently we will be visiting that one sometime in the future. So I learned a lot of valuable information with respect to that, and have some definite opinions on some of the issues with relative to monitoring and inspection, et cetera.
Commissioner Park.
I heard Mr. Reed say that we'll be visiting this again in the future, and you were nodding your head, Director Plowman. This discussion went straight to the board. It didn't go through us. It's a discussion of ordinance changes. Are we going to see ordinance changes here at this commission?
Yeah,
on these things?
Yeah, Commissioner Park through the chair. You will. They will
Right.
all be coming through the PC. That the government code requires that.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your summary.
You're welcome.
I look forward to adjournment.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have some
Just
news.
FYI, next week are the housing rezone hearings for the board.
Ah, that's right.
Tuesday in Santa Maria, Friday in Santa Barbara.
Okay. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yep.
I actually had several calls from citizens who sort of read the post-mortem from PC and is going into this, and they were very upset with me, and I kept on saying, it's not over, you still have one more chance. I said, but this is sort of what we had to do. So anyway, interesting. Thank you very much for the post-director's report, and we don't have to do a motion to adjourn, do we? No, we just do it.
And just to wrap one thing else. So for the minutes of April 1st, I think staff's preference just to bump them.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I think we're adjourned, and Commissioner Park can skedaddle up home.